Okay, hello everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome back. Welcome in. I'm seeing our participant numbers tick up here. Welcome back to the Supervisors in Government Community of Practice virtual networking event. We will get started in a minute or two as we let you all join. So take your time, get comfortable, and we'll get started in a minute or two. If you are in here with us, we do have an icebreaker for you. Spring, I think it's officially spring. I think that happened last week. So we have a spring themed question here. I'm just curious what everyone's favorite spring activities are. So feel free to share if you're here with us now in the chat. Um, Gardening, I had a feeling. Gardening, I'm so excited for gardening this year. I'm getting my toddlers to help me with that, so it should be an interesting endeavor. Let's see. Okay, I love this. We have planting flowers, of course, golf and soccer, taking walks, hiking, fishing, hiking. Sally, they must know you're with the Park Service. Working in the yard, daylight. Yes, that transition is always welcome to get more daylight in the day. Art and Park Festival, so true. My town is launching a new farmers market very close to me.
Mm,
I'm
nice.
I'm so excited. It's so close. Sally, what's on your list for this spring?
Oh, skiing. I'm not letting go skiing yet. We
Oh, is
still
that?
have spring skiing here in Colorado until late April. So,
Wow. Okay. I like it. I love that. Okay, well, it's 4:02, so let's get started because we have a lot to cover today. But welcome back again to the Supervisors in Government Community of Practice virtual networking event. If this is your first time with us, thank you so much for being here. We're excited you're here. This is a space for supervisors in government to come together to learn about a particular topic and to connect and learn from each other too. So we want you all to get friendly, get to know each other, connect in the chat. We do have a um, complimentary, supplementary LinkedIn group. We encourage you to join that so that you can connect with each other there as well. Just as a reminder, my name is Leah Anderson. I'm the Digital Marketing Director at GovLoop, and I host these. So again, welcome everybody. We're excited to get started today. As a reminder, what we're talking about today is fostering creativity on your teams. So this is a pretty interesting topic. I think it has, wide relevancy for all of us here. So I'm excited to dig into it with our featured speaker today. So I'm joined by Sally Mayberry, who's the Employee Engagement and Communications Manager at National Park Service. So thanks for joining us today, Sally.
yeah, thank you.
All right, like I said, we don't have a ton of time, so we're going to get right into it. We're starting very broad here, as broad as possible. Um, so Sally, for you, how do you define creativity?
Yeah, so I like the metaphor of thinking about a box, right? We all have access to the same information that's in the box, but nobody knows what lies outside of that box. So, how do you get there, right? So, that's where I think the creativity takes place. And at its core, I think that creativity is the ability to do things like generate novel or valuable ideas, right? And so at the Park Service, we've piggybacked off of the employee viewpoint survey results that we get every year. And instead of each of our divisions doing their own thing in interpretation, we've kind of brought that together so that we do that strategically as a directorate and then complemented by our own survey that drills a little bit deeper for us, solving problems in innovative ways. So, it's about moving beyond conventional solutions and finding more effective and efficient approaches to different things. Adapting and responding to change, right? It's about being flexible, especially nowadays, resourceful, and able to just navigate uncertainty. So I'm sure most of you have experienced this in your careers of just limited resources, right? So for us, with our budgets being cut and everything, we look internally to find people who have different talents, who might be willing to host a brown bag lunch or teach others about something that they're a subject matter expert in. So we turn within and just try to find it there. So creativity is not just about having ideas, right? It's about putting those ideas into action to create meaningful change. And I encourage you that, throughout kind of this should be a discussion of, what do you guys think is kind of at the core of creativity? How do you define what creativity is? And dropping some of that into the chat too, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But I would say that, creativity has been something that's kind of an aloof
Hmm.
topic and kind of intangible thing that I can't usually put my fingers on necessarily. And so I have conversations with friends and colleagues, and it's like, what inspires you? Where do you draw your inspiration in order to be creative? And that's a pretty regular topic because in a communications role, or if you're supervising people and you're working with your team and kind of approaching different challenges that don't necessarily have a really clear cut solution, you want to make sure that you're approaching things creatively and kind of creating an atmosphere so that your team also feels creative. And we'll talk a little bit about cultivating creativity. What does it look like? And when you identify what it shouldn't look like, or when you might be in trouble because there is no creativity.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So, Leah, do you want to jump in with anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you're approaching it is sort of how I think of it too. It is this broad, it can mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
Your point around creativity can kind of feel aloof, or we can
Yeah.
feel disconnected from it, or maybe it just feels abstract and it's like, you put that prompt on someone, okay, we need a
Yeah.
creative,
Be creative.
yeah, we need a creative solution to XYZ. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
I, how do I meet that mandate? How do I meet that sort of requirement? So I think that's where people get caught up a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think also to add to that context is what happens if you don't really feel like creativity is prioritized in your organization, or if it's
Yeah.
something that like, it sort of should be folded into things you're doing every day, but nobody's really helping you foster that, which is why we're here today. But I
Hmm.
think that kind of leads us to the next question. Why should we care about creativity? What is its But I just think it's really interesting because, again, what if you're not getting that from leadership or folks around you that creativity is a priority? Why should we still sort of embody that and really care about it, even if it's not maybe like a line item on a agenda somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that that's what sets people apart, right? When you're looking for people to be promoted or people that are go-to people in their roles of, are they able to think a little bit differently than maybe some of their coworkers, or do they have the ability to communicate and tap into that creativity? So, creativity is super important because it helps us solve complex problems, right? So we have a lot of complex interconnected issues that don't fit neatly into a framework a lot of times. And traditional solutions are really not meeting the needs of a lot of teams these days. And so, I'd already referenced that the Park Service, we fall short in our budget a lot of times. And one of the ways that we are able to think outside the box is we tap into partnerships, right? The National Park Foundation, different partnerships that we've cultivated over the years. And we go through different job corps to hire people to come and do work at the parks. And so you creatively kind of start looking at, okay, if we can't do it, how might that problem or that situation be solved outside of the borders of our immediate area, right? Um, Enhancing efficiency and effectiveness is just like doing more with less is a constant reality. I do an eye roll. A lot of times it's like, well, just use whatever resources you have available. But creativity helps us find innovative ways. I think to optimize resources, we talked a little bit about that, right, with team members and streamlining processes, right? So some people are really comfortable just doing things the way that they've done them. And then there's other people that have a tendency of saying, well, we could be doing this better, right? And we're going to do a quick exercise today that's going to walk us through kind of how you might be able to cultivate and start thinking about creativity and bringing that to the surface. Also, I think we have to increase public trust and engagement, especially now, of just making sure that we're being transparent and responsive to the public, depending on if you're state, local, or federal government. And, one of the key traits that a lot of employers are looking for, and that I think you as a supervisor would be looking for in your team, is adaptability and resilience. That's huge.
Mhm.
So that workforce engagement, it's all of those pieces of like, why should you care about creativity? And we'll talk a little bit about the next piece is how do you cultivate that in your team? But any comments in the chat, or Leah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to echo you on that. If anyone does have questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat. We do want to hear from you. Something that you said that's really interesting to me, though, around creativity is that point of adaptability. I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's like all these words kind of function together, but I think that's when creativity and adaptability is happening on your team, you see it because you see the people who are willing to kind of live in the gray area. They're okay
Hmm.
with not fully formed ideas, ideation. And that's interesting, but I think it can be a practice skill. Like, not all of us have to love
Yeah.
living in the gray to be creative. You know what I mean? Like, you can get used to that, but I think it's something that can be modeled by supervisors. Like,
Yeah.
I do want to hear from you. Don't feel like you have to have, a 4-page project plan that's 100% complete before we talk about an idea. I want to
Yeah.
hear those ideation stages. Um,
Hmm.
that's something I've seen, and we do that a lot internally here at GovLoop, but it's a world of difference when you encourage like
Totally.
not fully baked ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a lot of openness and sort of like a safe space, like, well, I was thinking maybe, and then,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
hear so much more. So I
Yeah,
like,
so that dovetails perfectly into how do you cultivate creativity in your job, your office, or your bureau, right? So, as you were indicating, you really start with yourself and how you behave, right? So, you as a supervisor are considered a leader. People look up to you. They're looking to see, what is my supervisor doing or not doing? That you kind of create that atmosphere of letting people know it doesn't have to be explicit. Maybe it's nonverbal, to what you were saying is like get your team together and do some spitballing, right? And like no kind of idea is a bad idea. I mean, we've all been in team meetings where, you're just kind of throwing an idea out there and maybe asking for help to refine it. And then the team starts to weigh in, and then the end product is way better than what you could have imagined it being. So I think it's important when we're looking at creating a space is to expand your perspective, right? There is no black and white. The reality is that, there's a lot of gray, there's a lot of fringe, there's a lot of out of the box kind of a thing. And I think a lot of times when you're expanding your perspective, one of the things I've had to learn in my career is my tendency when somebody says something or they throw out an idea, I have like this gut instinct of like, that won't work, or I don't want to do that. And I've learned over the years that I just be quiet
yeah,
and I sleep on it. You might give it 24 hours before you kind of give a final answer. Go for a walk, right? Go outdoors, go to the gym. Maybe you meditate or you do some journaling. Um, being mindful of your influences, right? Like surround yourself with the right kinds of influences in order for you to cultivate that creativity, right? So if you're in a meeting or you're having that team building or spitballing session, set up kind of some um, rules of engagement so that people understand it's a safe space, right? And that everybody agrees that that's the kind of space that you're trying to create.
right.
And I also do some coaching within the Department of Interior. And I talk a lot about being like a Sherlock Holmes, and that's kind of also been a consistent thread in my career. Ask questions, right? Don't make the assumption. If you don't understand something or somebody's idea is like, God, that's a dumb idea, maybe ask a few questions of saying, tell me more about that, right?
Hmm.
Because maybe you're not understanding where that person's coming from. So it's really, really good, just I think in life in general, is to ask questions and to actively listen to what people are saying. Don't
Hmm.
think about how you're going to respond. Just take a breather and listen to what's being said. And then my last thing on this is just like assuming positive intent. That
Right.
removes a whole lot of stuff, especially in emails, where
Hmm.
you're like, look, I'm just going to assume positive intent with my team members or the office that I work for, and it gets rid of a lot of that doubt and fear and kind of that background noise, the chatter that's happening in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Anything
that
you want to add on that?
yeah, there's so much. No, I think that's a great point, just assuming the intent, to your point, especially with written communications, we put our own sort of interpretations on things when it's written, maybe not always to the benefit of everyone involved, but that's a good reminder. I did have a couple of things for you before we move into the exercise, um, because I think a lot of people maybe don't see themselves as creative people, like, oh, I'm not creative, or
Yeah,
like we describe ourselves that way, maybe because at some point we were kind of presented with I don't know, in grade school, like if you're creative, you're good at art, you're good at, all those other sort of like abstract things. So maybe, I don't know, I think I hear that a lot, like I'm just not a creative person. So what do you think, how can we kind of shift our mindset away from that for people who don't think of themselves as creative?
yeah,
Is there, I'm trying to think, like, is there just a way we can kind of reframe what creativity looks like? And we've talked about that a bit with
yeah.
being flexible,
Well,
being
I mean, that's
adaptable.
funny. Like you jumped automatically to kind of like drawing or artsy kind of, and I mean, creative takes on the form of so many things, right? It might be a lot of people said, hey, I'm getting ready to plant my garden or, flowers. Like you have to be creative. I'm like, what flowers are you picking? What color choices are you making? What recipe are you cooking or how are you adjusting the recipe? Like there's so many different ways that you can be creative. Like my whiteboard, I have like 7 different colors of pens and it's just like multicolored. And then I've got like all these different things that are stuck up there. And some people might say, well, that's kind of creative what you're doing over there, right? So I think you have to step outside when it comes to perspective. And I would put my coaching hat on and say, be aware of how you're talking to yourself, right? I'm not creative. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
These negative kind of thoughts that come up. And you don't have to take a major leap of faith and say, look, I've got it all figured out. I've got this great idea. And, you kind of like present some grandiose idea. Sometimes it's just fine tuning something and
Mhm.
making something that's very practical and small. And then that starts to kind of grow legs, similar to at the Park Service, for example. During COVID, people felt very disconnected. And so one of the really easy things that we did is we created this program called Lunch Trios.
Mhm.
And basically, what it does is people sign up for it, and once a month for 30 minutes, they get together, whether it's in person or virtually. At the time, it was virtually. And you get to meet new team members across the country that you don't work with, and it gives you an opportunity to do some networking like we are here. And it takes literally like 20 minutes to set it up every month. And you just randomize the names, you send an email out, and then it's up to the individuals to schedule the lunch and figure out what time and what it looks like.
Mhm.
But that has then snowballed into from one division to the directorate, and now it's offered in Maine Interior at the Department of Interior, right? That wasn't the initial idea. It was just like, oh, we're just going to get a few people together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that definition of what's creative, ask other people, what do you think is creative? Or what do you think I do that's creative? And I think people would be really surprised to find out what kind of answers they get.
I think so too. I think so too. And
Yeah.
again, framing it now from a supervisor's perspective too, I think it can be really powerful if that's something that we're sort of ultra focused on naming and other people now as well, because that's really powerful, right? If you get that feedback, especially if you don't think of yourself as a creative person, and somebody
Yeah.
your supervisor says to you, I that was a really interesting way to approach XYZ.
Hmm. Hmm.
That can be really powerful too. So I would encourage
Yeah,
everyone.
I mean, you make a point of saying like the recognition piece, right? Of
Mm,
like calling it out and just
right.
calling it for what you think it is because a person may not think that.
Yeah.
And then also rewarding creative contributions, right?
Hmm.
So make things available to people so that they can reward for whether it's creative out of box or if it's just really great practice that they're doing. We started some e-cards. Again, super simple idea. I was for 2.5 days sending e-cards to people, right? Then we automated it. And then from that automation, the Park Services a Bureau adopted it, and now it's available to all of the employees. It started as a really small idea, and then it just kind of grew into something more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. I will say I'm just taking a look at the chat here, and it looks like Lena contributed something, an idea I really like, and other people do as well. So Lena said, I learned the idea of doing a bad idea exorcism where we brainstorm a list of the worst ideas. It helps to create a safe space and get folks more willing to share. People usually laugh and get to a more comfortable place.
Totally.
That is, I think I've heard of that tactic before for brainstorming, like, yeah, worst case scenarios, worst ideas. But Lena, to your point, I think that really does help create a safe space. People feel comfortable, and then more
Yeah.
ideas flow after that too. But bad idea exorcism, I'm gonna put that one in the back pocket. Thank you for
Yeah, I love that.
thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we're going to move into an exercise here. So I'm going to move forward for a slide. So there are two,
Yeah.
you're not seeing double. There are two exercises here, but Sally, I think we have enough time to walk through one, and that's going to be the
Okay.
reframe. So I'll let
Okay.
you walk through that.
Yeah, I would encourage you guys to take a screenshot if we don't have enough time. I do want to talk about like the signs of a creative team and what are the warning signs. I know
Yeah.
we're getting close to time, but this is just an activity that I came up with that I thought might be a good way to nudge creativity in a way. And the goal of it really is just to practice reframing. When I talk about perspective earlier, right? Reframing everyday situations and problems where we're like, oh, that's not creative. That's just what I do. Well, that's what it is for you, but maybe not somebody else. So again, Sherlock Holmes, put that hat on, what if questions, right? So the idea here is to identify a challenge. So think of something that's routine that you do, a weekly report. Maybe it's a reoccurring meeting that you have, responding to emails, whatever it is, and take, kind of that idea, that challenge of what you want to focus on, and then ask, what if? So a mundane report, like, God, I hate doing these reports, like they suck, we could be doing this more efficiently, cross collaborating, whatever. So what if? And then I want you to write down at least 3 what if questions related to that particular task.
Mhm.
What if we could collaborate on this? What if I took, shut my email down for an hour and then I checked my email every hour or that I schedule kind of time? So think about a challenge, write down 3 what ifs as it relates to that challenge. And then that will allow you to kind of explore the possibilities, right? What if you can automate a report? We did a lot of automation with Power Apps and Power BI that are really helping kind of us talk about, at a very strategic level. What if you held a walking meeting instead of people sitting behind the computer screen? And let's just go old school and let's have a conference call, right? Forget the video. So
Yeah,
just
makes sense.
jot down 1 or 2 potential benefits.
Maybe someday we'll do this call as a walking meeting.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, you let me know how much time we should.
Yeah, I don't know. Why don't you guys drop an emoji and like thumbs up? Do you want to work on the exercise? You want to slide into the signs of a highly creative team and the warning signs that you should be looking out for?
Yeah, let's move to the last question. And if everyone's still thinking about this exercise or has
Yeah.
questions, put them in the chat and we'll come back. But I think
All
the
right,
last one was a good one too.
cool.
And just a reminder, both of these exercises, we'll put a link to the slides in your follow-up email so you can come back to this too.
So, let's talk about like signs that would indicate that you have some creativity going on in your team. So the sign might be that team members are actively looking out and valuing diverse viewpoints, right? Instead of shooting them down, they are kind of building upon them or, asking questions, basically fostering an open and honest communication. Um, Experimentation and risk taking is also a sign of a creative team, right? So the sign would be that the team embraces experimentation, they're vulnerable, they feel like they're in a safe space to do that. And they view failures as a learning opportunity and they're willing to take calculated risks. So, my boss always tells us that it's okay for us to take risk, right? We're not like taking massive risk, but just slight risks. And if something doesn't work, we just say, all right, we tried it, move on, right? Maybe the timing's wrong, or maybe it just didn't, it fell flat because of the culture or whatever. But experimentation and risk taking is a sign that you have a healthy team and that they're being creative. Some of the warning signs of when a team is lacking creativity is kind of that mentality of, well, that's how we've always done it. We don't need to change it. Like it's working just fine, right? It's average. So resistance to change and just outdated processes and a lack of willingness to explore kind of new ideas or different ways of doing things, right? It goes back to that perspective and
Mhm.
being able to adapt and that resilience of saying, all right, well, let's try it. What's the worst thing that could happen? We all hate it or it doesn't work, and then we go back to the old thing.
Mhm.
Idea suppression is another sign that there's a problem, right? So ideas are quickly shot down or they aren't really given the proper consideration. Now, there's times when people will pop off and tell you different things, and maybe you don't have enough time to discuss them, but there's a way to table that and say, hey, we don't have time to look at this because our agenda is this, but it sounds like an interesting idea. Let's table it and then let's incorporate that. Let's talk about it offline or we'll talk about it in another meeting, right? But the idea doesn't get kind of shot down and forgotten.
Right.
And then complacency and stagnation, right? Just a lack of curiosity. No one's asking questions. Oh my God, I've been in so many meetings where everyone's just kind of like, another meeting. They're not asking questions. And it's like, hello, is anyone paying attention? So,
Mm.
I think that a lack of curiosity, the reluctance to learn new skills, it goes back to that adaptability and resilience in the 21st century, and just limited communication and collaboration, right? Like collaborate outside of your team as a supervisor, encourage your team to collaborate with other people in different departments. That diversity can help with creativity. And then my last one is just siloed thinking and lack of collaboration to piggyback off of that last point of teams are working in isolation with limited communications.
Yeah, I don't like ending on a bummer, but all of those points are so important. And I think
Yeah.
we've talked about it a few times. The concept of creating a safe space, like allowing risk, allowing failure,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's such a basis for people to even want to share new ideas. So I think a lot of that comes up a lot. And I do want to acknowledge too that it is particularly hard to be creative when you're tired, stressed, you know,
Yeah.
all of those things. So I think the people in this group as supervisors or people who want to be in supervisory roles, we do have a lot of power to jumpstart creativity in your organizations if you're willing to kind of put that energy into it. So I do think we have to sort of contribute and model some of the behaviors we want to see. I'm thinking of that meeting you just described where everyone's zoned out. You can't be a zoned out participant if you also want to see creativity on your team. So we do have to do that and add to it. So um, on that note, though, I we're coming to time here, so I appreciate everyone's time and energy being here with us today. Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, we really take it seriously that you're spending the time with us. So we do hope you'll join again, though. In April, we'll be talking about how to be productive without burnout because all of this output and creativity and productivity could come at a cost. So we want to also take care of the wellness aspect and talk about that with this group too. So
Yeah.
Sally, thank you so much for joining us today. These are always,
Yeah, thank you
of
and GovLoop for inviting me to do this session. It was fun.
course, of course. And again, one more reminder, you will get a follow-up email from us with links and resources and all good stuff on this topic. But finally, thank you so much for being here, Sally. Thanks again, and we'll see you all in April.
Sounds good. And I dropped in a really fun book if anybody is interested in clicking that link. I'm sorry it was such a long link, but it's a book called The Crossroads of Should and Must and Find and Follow Your Passion. It's fun because you actually write in the book and it prompts you to do different things. So it's interactive.
Love a workbook. Thank
Yeah.
you. We'll,
You're
we'll
welcome.
put a link to that in the follow-up too. Thank you so
Sweet.
much. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.